Hi all, welcome to a new video. Today in this video we are going to develop one performance testing tool from scratch, and it will be a very simple performance testing tool where we are going to test one get API and generate one performance testing report in HTML format. The goal of this video to make you understand that how the performance testing actually work, behind the scene, behind the user interface of your easy tools. So let's get started. Okay, so it is going to be a long video as well as one interesting video. So if you go through the entire tutorial, you will learn, apart from performance testing things, you will learn different topics. How can we make API calls, how to run parallel threads in Python. Okay, so let's first visualize that how it is going to work. Okay, so for doing performance testing we need some items, right? So I'll call this first item will be number of users, or we'll call it threads. These will be the parallel users. Okay, second would be the API endpoint which we are going to test. Okay, third, it will be the request type because there are various APIs. So for our case we will be focusing only on get API. I don't want to develop the other request types, but if you want you can do it. I'll show you where you can add the code while we are developing this. Another will be the duration of test, and another thing we are going to add the number of iteration. That means in one go how many rounds it should complete. Okay, so what it is going to do, that first of all our user will give all these inputs: number of users, API endpoint, request, that, and then when we will start our code, it is going to create parallel threads, as many threads we are going to give in this variable, and it is going to hit the API, and it is going to make parallel get request to that particular API, and while doing that it will collect some matrices, and then we will calculate the matrices in order to find out the average response time, the 90th percentile, the 95th percentile, the error percentage, and then we are going to show them in a HTML report which will be generated by our CLA based tool. Okay, so let's jump into our editor. So we'll create a folder, we'll call this stp python simple, sorry, I have to write STT, which is simple testing tool, I would say. Well, yeah, you can give any name. So currently we are landing into Visual Studio Code. So here we are going to start our start writing our code. So before doing that, let's install one library. In this case we are going to use only one additional library. It will be the NumPy. I'll show that where we are going to use it. So pip install NumPy, you can execute this command, or conda install NumPy. So in my case requirement already satisfied, that means I already have NumPy installed, so we don't have to install it again. Okay, so let's call this std version 1.py. So before doing that, we know that what are the modules is going to use for this code, so we are going to import everything. I'll just close the sidebar. So we'll import requests because as we are interacting with API, eventually we are going to hit one API, so we would need this request library. We need the concurrent futures. Don't worry, you don't need to install it, it will come with Python. It will help us to run the threads concurrently, and we would also need threading, okay, for doing that multi-threaded operation. We would need time because we have to calculate some time, and we may need to wait for some time. We need to identify the duration, so for that we need the time library. We would need NumPy, and we cannot write numpy every time, so we'll call it as np, and we would need the date time. Date time is actually optional, but we need it for our report for some cosmetic things. Okay, so the first thing what we're going to do, we are going to write a Python function for calling the API. So we'll call it def call API. Now this def call API is going to take some arguments. These will be API endpoint, then the request type, that what type of request I want to make. We would need the response times and the errors. Okay, so now let's define the function that what it is going to do. So we'll create a variable called start time, and start time will be the current time. So we'll, from the time module, we'll call this time method to fetch the current time. Now we'll write a try except block because we are handling API. If the API request fails, then we have to do something, right? So under try block, let's write pass for now, and in except block, let's say pass. So let's fill our try block first. So if the request type, and user can enter the request type in uppercase or lowercase. So in order to comparing, we are going to forcefully convert this in lower. If it is equal to get, okay, and in our case obviously it will be get only, not any other thing. Then in a response variable we're going to save it. So request.get API endpoint. Okay, now we are not going to write anything else, but let's write one else statement. If you want, you can write elif request type dot lower if is equal to post. Then below you add the logic that how it should make the post call. Same for the other methods also, delete, put. So in our case we'll just put one simple if else block, and let's print it out here. Inappropriate http method. Okay, now here after the API call is done, we are not done with the try block, so we'll start the except block later. So once the API call is done, we are going to find out the end time dot time. Okay, so the response time will be end time minus start time. Start time is when we started the API, end time the API is ended. So this is the response time. Now this response time we are going to save in this response times list. Okay, so this is a list actually. So response times dot append will append the response time, which is this one. Alright, now so here our API is executed, we are getting some response. Okay, now irrespective of whether it is passing or failing, we will get some response, right? So it is going to consume some time, right? So that's why we have added the response time for it. Here we are not giving any verdict that whether the request is successful or failed, but if it is successful, then we have to write a condition that if my response means this variable where we are saving this get called response dot status code is not equal to 200, that means if it is not successful, then let's call it errors, because here we are going to append all the errors, append 1, and if not, that means if the request is successful, then append here 0. Okay, simple. Now in this case, if any kind of exception occurs, for that we have written this except block. Okay, so that our code should not fail, it will keep running. So after except, we'll write exception as E. So even if any exception is occurring, we'll find out the end time. Okay, and then the response time will be, during exception also we are going to have this end time minus start time, and in response times we are going to add the response time. Okay, now as exception occurred here, that means what? Something happened on this error part, right? So some error happened while calling the API. So by default we have to append one into the errors list in the except block. So we'll write errors dot append 1. Okay, and then for logging purpose we can write a print statement that API call failed. Okay, what is the reason? Reason is E, because what is our exception? From the thread. Okay, now what is the thread? The thread is threading dot current thread dot name, in whichever thread it is running, because whenever we are running our code in multi-threaded way, each thread has a name. That name will be visible here. It will help you to debug later that during which thread it failed. Okay, so our call API function is done. This is absolutely fine for now, and it only supports the get request. Now we have to run the iterations also, right? So we'll call it another function. We'll create another function which we'll call it as run iterations. Now here in run iteration we are going to give some arguments. These are API endpoint, of course. We would need the request type. We need the iterations, that how many times in one go, how many times it should hit the API. We would need the response times, and we need the errors, because in iteration also error can occur. Now iteration means it will run in a loop, so we would need a for loop. So for I in range, well, not for loop, we can use any loop. Iterations. Now we have to call our method call API for hitting that API for that many times. So these are the arguments. So as we are keeping the arguments names same, so it is the benefit. We can just directly copy paste, and that's it. Now here I variable is not used, right? So it's not mandatory to put this I in the memory. So in order to avoid that, we can put one underscore in Python. Okay, when the variable is not used of a for loop, we can put it as underscore, so it will not consume memory. Fine. So iteration is also done. Now we would need something to calculate the matrices, because we would need a number of parameters, right, to be populated in our thing. So calculate matrix. Now for calculating matrix, we need the response times list, we need the errors, and we need the total iteration. So how to calculate the matrix? First of all, we would need average response time. Now in average response time, we have to find the average of whatever values are added in the response times list, right? Because every time we are adding the response time here in this response time list. Now for making this work easy, we are using the numpy library. So for doing the average, we can write np.mean response times if response times else 0. It means that if response times has values, then only do this mean, or else assign 0 to this average response time. Okay, Same we are going to do for the 90th percentile. So we'll call it P90 response time np dot percentile. I want to find the percentile for this response time array, and this is 90th percentile. The second argument will be 90 if response times, else 0. Similarly, we'll find out the P99 response time np dot percentile response times, and it will be 99 if response times, else 0. And then the last matrix of our list is the error percentage. It's very important. Okay, so how the error percentage is calculated? For calculating the error percentage, we will first, whatever errors are there, we have appended 1 1 1 1 1, we are going to find out the sum. So we will cover it with the sum variable, right? And then we'll divide it by the number of total iteration, and then entire thing we have to multiply with 100 in order to find out the percentage value. Now this is applicable if errors, means if errors array has value, then only it is applicable, or else it will be 0. After we are good, we are going to return all these values. So average response time, P90 response time, P99 response time, and error percentage. Okay, so we are good. Now with these values we have to prepare our HTML report. So we'll write def generate HTML report. Now it will take some arguments. Okay, so in HTML report I want to show my API endpoint, so I'll take an argument for API endpoint. I want to show the average response time. I want to show the P90 response time. I want to show the P99 response time. I want to show the error percentage, and also the total iteration, that how many iteration it is completed, our code. It's important for us to learn this. Okay, now we are going to build a template for our HTML report. So instead of writing it here, we will use Visual Studio Code Intelligence to do this. So index.html. So first let's write HTML tag. This is important. We did a head tag, and in the head tag let's set a title for our application. We'll call this API testing report. Okay, so we are good with the head tag. Now in the head tag let's add some CSS, but not now. CSS will add later, but let's decide our body first. So body, so in the body what we are going to do, we will have a heading. Let's call it API test report. Okay, it will be our heading. Then we would need the test date, like when we are executing the test. Now for the test date I am going to write some expression inside curly braces. To the point to be noted, these are not the functions of HTML. I am writing this because I am going to take this as a string to our code. Okay, so I'll write date time dot now strf time. Okay, this is for converting our time into a string format. Inside that we are going to write the format. It should be %y, that means first it should be year, then it should be month, then it should be day, and after that it should be hour, colon it should be minute, colon it should be second. Okay, then again another p tag where let's put the API endpoint name. So we'll write strong. I hope you know that for bold we are not using B anymore, we are using strong. So API endpoint under test. Okay, and after strong we are going to again use curly braces. We'll write the API endpoint. here you can see in the Python code how I am taking the argument. I am using the exact style here. Okay, now we would need a table, so let's define a table. Sorry, I'm not good at HTML, that's why I'm a bit slow, because I'm not I don't work in front end usually. So we have the metric, and we will need another heading, and we'll call it value. Okay, this is one tr. Now another tr we will have, there we'll have one td, one cell value. We'll call this number of iterations, and the td value will be within curly braces total iterations. This is also exactly same, the variable name how we have in our Python code. And then let's copy this expression, because I don't want to type it again and again. So we have the average response time, we have the 98th percentile, we have the 99th percentile, and we have the error percentage, right? So let's copy the variable names and use it wisely here. So after total iterations, we have the average response time, then we have the 90th percentile response time, then we have the 99th percentile response time, and we have the error percentage. Okay, so we're good with all the things. Now here let's copy it, the entire HTML content, and then let's collapse it. I don't need it anymore. Now we'll call it report underscore HTML. We'll write a f. Now this is a multi-line string, so we are going to use 6 double quotes, and inside 6 double quotes we are going to paste whatever we have here. Okay, I think I got some error. Need to find out why. Okay, I think it is crossing the indentation, because of which it was throwing error. Oh no, I kept 4 double quotes, that's why. Okay, so we have it now. As we are using f here, so all the values which we are writing inside curly braces, they are becoming the formatted strings, so inside which our variable actual value will get placed. Okay, now another thing I forgot to add, which is the some CSS values. We have to add it, it's required, or else it will look very bad. So let's call it style here in the HTML. Later on we'll copy this style tag and we'll directly paste it. Okay, we need body. So in the body we are going to write the font family, and let's use Arial for this. Okay, by default lots of values are coming. I hope front-end developers will know like why these are coming. I'm not sure at all. So we need a margin. Let's use a 20 pixel margin. Now we would need one. Let's give a style to our h1 tag. Let's align the text into center, because that main API test report, it should be in the center. I would like that. Let's use some CSS for the tables. So we'll do width is 100%, and border collapse. Okay, let's use it as collapse, and from top we'll keep some margin of maybe 20 pixels. Now for the table headers and cells, we would need some border of 1 pixel. It should be solid, and it should be DDD. Okay, I think it's fine. And for TH and TD specifically, we'll add a padding of 8 pixels, and we can align the text to left. That's fine, you can do anything whatever you like. And TH for background color, let's use I think F2. I think it's somewhat like kind of grayish color. Yeah, okay, let's visualize the HTML page before using it in our Python code. I think that would be the best option. Fine, right? So we have the API test report, we have the metric, we have the number of iteration. Okay, we did some mistake here, because it should not be number of iteration, it should be average response time. So let's edit it here. We'll go to HTML, so it will be our average response time, let's put bracket s, it will be 90th percentile response time, let's put s again, it will be 99th percentile response time, and it will be our error percentage. Let's visualize. Okay, it looks good for me. Well, if you are good in front end, go ahead, edit it, make it attractive, but we have to do something here. I'll tell you what. See, I already told you that this is a template, right? So inside the head, right, when we are going to paste the this thing, our css, so css also we are using curly braces. Now Python formatted string will not understand that why the curly braces are there. It will act them, it will Python will take them as variables, right? So in order to avoid this issue, I want Python to ignore these curly braces. So I will put two curly braces to avoid it. Okay, wherever I am writing single curly braces for the css, and which is not variable, of course, we are going to use two variables, sorry, two curly braces. Fine, this one is also good, this is also good. See, we don't have any error now, right? Now here also, we already changed it, but we forgot to update. So let's copy the table tag again, because here we had added the this average response time 90th percentile now, and in this code we have not updated, so we'll copy paste the table tag here. Cool. So we have the values in place. Fine. So our template is ready. Now we have to save this template, right? So for saving this template, we have to go to that proper indentation. Fine. For saving this template, we'll write with open the normal Python thing. We'll call this API test report.html, and we are going to write something. So we'll put the W permission, and we'll call this as report file. And inside report file, we are going to write the report HTML, whatever content we have created. And after that, let's add a print statement that HTML report generated. Fine. Now this method is also done. So our cosmetic things are done, like we are now able to generate the HTML report. I'll collapse it because I don't need to see the entire thing. We can calculate the matrices, we can run the iteration, and we can call the API. Now the main thing is to run the test parallelly with multiple threads. So let's write the method for that. So test API parallel, and here we are going to take the number of threads as one argument. We would need the API endpoint, what we are going to test, and we would need the request type, we would need the duration, and we would need the iterations. Alright, so let's first define the start time. So start time, sorry, I think I have written it wrong. It should be start underscore time, because this is a variable. So from the time library, we are going to import the time. Now what should be the end time? The end time will be whatever start time is plus whatever duration we want for our test. Okay, let's create some blank list. So response times, errors, where we are going to keep appending the things, and then total iterations equal to 0. Okay, for now it is 0 completely, because no iteration has started, right? Now we have to run the code parallelly. Okay, so how to do that? Our goal is to execute this run iterations function, okay, parallelly with the number of threads whatever user is going to give. So for that, we have to use the concurrent futures function. So how to use it? With concurrent dot futures. From concurrent, we are going to grab this futures. Inside futures we have one method called thread pool executor. Inside thread pool executor we are going to define that how many thread pools should be there. That is defined under max workers, and max worker will be whatever number of threads is given by the user. Now we cannot every time call this and call the entire thing and call function inside of that, right? So we will give it a small name as executor. Okay, now here we have to write a while loop which will run until our duration. So this is the current time and it should run until the end time, whatever we have defined in line number 119. We'll create a list futures. Okay, futures is the important list where we will add the functions. We will keep adding the function to run the code, till our number of threads, till the number of threads, till how many threads we are inserting into the into our tool. Okay, so we'll write a for loop for underscore. I hope you remember why you are using underscore, because we are not going to use the variable in the for loop. Number of threads, our goal is to run that piece of code multiple times, so that's why I'm using the for loop, and it should run as many the number of threads is given to the code. Okay, and we'll keep adding in the futures list the method what you're going to execute. Okay, that method should run parallelly. So we will tell this executor that, hey bro executor, you have to submit this function. Now what is the method? The method name is run iteration, right? Because here only we have defined the for loop that it should run for that much iteration. So we'll call it submit this run iterations. Now in run iterations, here whatever arguments we have here, right, we have to give in comma separated. Okay, one second, I think these are the arguments here. Okay, I have made one mistake, not a mistake actually, the naming convention I completely changed, so that's why I think it is not behaving appropriately. So let's give the same type of naming conventions, so API request response times and errors. So we'll copy whatever argument we have and we'll add it here. Let's give alt Z to word wrap it, so that it will not no, it will be visible in single screen. We don't need to horizontally scroll. Okay, so it's good, we have given it properly. Now outside the for loop we have to tell the concurrent library that futures will wait the futures. It means that it will start running all the future run iteration whatever we have given to it. Okay, so what will be the total iteration? Total iteration is required, so plus equal to total iteration is required for our HTML report. So total iteration will be number of threads, that how many threads are there, multiplied by the iterations, how many iterations are there in one go. Okay, and to control the loop frequency, because this is a while loop, let's give a sleep of 1 second. Every 1 second it will do the work, or else it will keep forcing our computer. Now outside the concurrent executor function, we are going to calculate the matrices, right? So for calculating matrices we have the method created, calculate matrices. Calculate matrix takes what? It takes the response times array, it takes the errors array, and it takes the total iterations array, total iteration number, right? Now these things, calculate matrix is going to return these variables, right? And as I am returning multiple variable, so there is a wonderful thing, we can write all the variable name, we can put equal to sign. So whatever values it is calculating, it will assign all the 4 values to these 4 variables. But make sure in whichever sequence you are returning the variables, they should be written here in the same sequence. Okay, if you write P90 first, average response time second, it is going to save the average response time value into the P90 and P90 value into the average response time variable. So that will not work as expected. Okay, and then we will run the generate HTML report function, and we know the general HTML report, what it takes the API endpoint, and after that it will take these variables, right? Average response time, P90, P99, error percentage, and then total iterations also is required. So we'll add a comma and we'll add the total iterations. Okay, so it's fine currently, so we are able to run the test parallelly. Now let's come out of the method because this method is done. Now we have to call everything organizedly, so we'll call if name equal to main, it will be our main function, it will be the entry point of our code. Number of threads equal to int, it should be integer. We will take the input from our user, enter the number of threads, user will enter. API endpoint, it will be a string, so it will be only input in this case, enter the API endpoint, and we would need the request type, input, enter the request type, we can write get, post, put, delete, whatever user wants, but in this case only get will work. Okay, we would need a duration for the test, so duration will be again in integer, so we'll write input, enter the duration of the test, it will be in seconds, so we'll specify in s. And what else was there, the number of iterations, right? It's also an integer, so input, enter the number of iterations. Okay, iterations per user slash thread. Okay, and once we get all these things, we just have to execute our this method, which is test API in parallel. So number of threads, comma API endpoint, comma request type, comma duration, comma and iterations. Cool. Now it's time for the main thing. I'll delete this HTML file, it is not required. I'll zoom out a bit because we have worked very hard to write these many lines of code. Now it's time for the real exam. We are going to test it. So let's go to Reckless portal. I think I've written wrong, anyways we'll get it. Let's take a sample get API from their website itself. Maybe this get, of course we need get only. So list users, so this is the endpoint, so we'll copy, we are going to use it. Okay, so let's run the code. Python sttv1, what's this? Okay, enter the number of threads. I want to run only for 5 users, that's it. Enter the API endpoint, this is the API endpoint. Enter the request type, it should be get. Enter the duration, 30 seconds. Enter the number of iteration, 3. Okay, now we have to wait for 30 seconds. Now meanwhile it is running. What we can do now, it will be a command line tool for us, right? So as it will be a command line tool, we can take these whatever variables we are taking here directly in the terminal. We can use it as we can make it as to user will give all these values in the as a command line argument, like it will call our exe file and then it will define all these variables. Okay, number of threads, like that, API endpoint equal to this, request type equal to this, duration is this, iterations is this, like that. Okay, anyways we are going to do it right now, so that's not a problem. So here our report is generated. Let's copy the path, go to our browser and hit the report. Okay, we are getting it. So number of iteration is 60. Should it be 60? Okay, it has executed for 30 seconds. Of course it can vary. average response time, this one. Okay, we are getting big floating numbers, right? Okay, if we want, we can limit it, but we have to limit it here only in the wherever we are writing the HTML report. Now here we have to limit it. So yeah, so these are the floating values, right? Average response time, these things. For limiting it, what we can do, after average response time, we can add a colon, we'll write dot, we'll write 4f, that means up to 4 decimals limited. Okay, same for this, same for this. And for error percentage, as this is a percentage value, only I think 2 decimals are more than enough. Okay, now let's test it again. So I'll just delete the file and let's do this. Number of threads will be 3. I'll reduce it. API endpoint is, oh no, I think I already copied the path of the HTML file, right? That's why my clipboard got updated. So that will be our endpoint. Request type is get, duration is 10 seconds only, number of iterations per user, it should be 5. Let's wait for 10 seconds. Looks like 10 second is taking more than 30-second time. Okay, yeah, done. HTML report generated. So let's copy the path and okay, I think the path will be same only, right? So we just have to refresh it. Cool. So we have limited the decimal values up to 4, and if you want, you can reduce it, that is completely fine. Error percentage is currently 0, 99 percentile we have, 90th percentile we have, average response time also we have, and the total number of iteration. This is the endpoint and this is the time of the test. Okay, now it's time to bind our application in a command line tool. So before that, as I told that we are going to take these things as argument. So how the argument should work, we have to define it. So let's create a file. It's not required actually, this is just for our understanding. So suppose our application name is stt.exe. okay, so it should run like this, that someone will go to that folder where the exe file is present. They will do stt.exe dash the dash t will be for threads, we'll define in our documentation, so it will be 3. Then what are the other things are there? API endpoint, so we'll call this dash u for the URL, and we'll put the URL https xyz.com/API, and we have the method, so we'll call it dash x, and we'll call this get. And what else is there? We have the duration, so dash d, or maybe dash d, because t already we're using here, right? So dash d should be 30 seconds. And what else is there? We have the iterations, right? So dash I, there will be 5 iteration. So user is going to execute this line, and whatever for example, we will be keeping this in our GitHub, right? In the documentation we mentioned that there should be a convention for running the tool, so you have to run like this only. That's fine. Okay, now we have to target these values, right, properly. So there should be a sequence, or maybe what we can do, let's put some equal to here. Or maybe let's don't put equal to, instead of that we'll target it normally, that's not a problem. Fine. So this is argument number 1. Let's start from here only. This is our argument number 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4, this is 5, this is 6, and d will be 7, it will be 8, it will be 9, it will be 10. Okay, so now here first is 3, So okay, we have to take the command line argument, right? So we have to import this sys library. Will come down, and yeah, number of threads, right? Number of threads should be, it should be int, we know that. So sys dot argv of, what is it, 0, 1, it should be 2, right? The position of 3 is 2, so the second argument is our number of threads. U will be the URL, and 4 will be the index for the URL. So API endpoint will be sys dot argv of 4, cool, right? And 5 we will ignore, 6 will be the method. So again, sys dot argv of 6. It's just a workaround, but we can develop this very efficiently. Maybe on the next tutorial I will show that how to handle the flags for Python. uh, Here in this case, the method we are following, to be honest, if you just miss the sequence of the variables, the code is going to fail badly. But just for the sake of one command line tool, we are using this. So with the duration, it should be in the number 8. Fine. So duration, again, it's an integer, so I'll keep it as it is. It should be 8, and iteration should be 10. Yeah. So again, sys dot argv of 10. Find it. Now let's build an argument and just test it. So it should be for 15 seconds or 10 seconds will do. Iteration 5 is good. Now we just have to replace the URL. So again, we'll go to regress. Why I have closed the tab? Okay, no problem. We'll go to this endpoint, we'll copy it, and we will place in place of this URL. Okay, right? So as we are taking the values properly, so here we cannot use the stt.exe because we have not converted our code into exe yet. So let's go to new terminal and Python stt v1. After that, all the arguments what we have, right? T equal to 3, number of threads, dash u, this is the URL, dash x is the method, dash d is the duration, dash I is the our iterations. So let's run it and check it if it is working fine. Okay, it worked fine. So we can copy and we can go to browser and we can paste it. Cool. Now let's convert this into a exe file. Okay, and of course I don't think so that we would need a console window, but let's have the console window for the better input, sorry, better output. So let's delete the test file and as well as our this HTML report file. So for converting any Python code into an exe file, we would need one library. There are many libraries, but I use the basic one, which is PyInstaller. So you can run this command pip install PyInstaller. It will be installed. For me, it is already installed. So we'll call the PyInstaller, and I want the one file because I don't want any dependent file. I want everything to be binded in a single exe. Okay, I don't want clumsy softwares. And script name I am writing, sorry, it should be stt-v1.py. okay, and then we will hit enter. Now we have to wait for some time. We have to give PyInstaller some time to bind our entire application into an executable file, which will run without even having Python in your computer. Take this exe file to any machine where you don't have Python. There also it will run fine, but you have to follow that procedure, the command. I think I did. Okay, I just destroyed the command. I forgot the command, that what are the commands we have used. So let's go to recycle bin, and I think it was test, so I'll just restore the file. I think we got that. Yes, okay. For testing purpose, at least we need this, so that's why we should not lose it, because I have not written the documentation yet for this code. This is just developed from scratch. Anyways, Okay, it's still running. Py installer is still running. Fine, it is completed. Now under the dist folder you will find that STT thing. Okay, build folder you will find lots of things. I'll leave it as it is. We are focused on this STT v1 only. So let's go to our folder in the Windows Explorer. Okay, so we have the exe file present here, right? Now imagine that this computer, it does not have Python. Okay, so how to run it? Simply we'll go to the location, we'll open command prompt here. Okay, and then we'll right click the command, which is stt. Now in this case it's not stt .exe, it's stt-v1.exe. Then we are going to execute this command in the command prompt. See, we are not using Python here, right? So let's wait for 10 seconds. Let's see if this exe file is able to do the performance test and generate report for us. We have to wait for 10 seconds. Okay, HTML report generated and we got that file. Let's right click and open this with Google Chrome. Wow, we are getting the result. So it's working absolutely fine. Okay guys, so this is the procedure for developing one, you know, very simple performance testing tool, which will be able to test your get APIs only. If you want, of course, here you can add for the post, for the delete, for the put, or means all the methods you can incorporate here under this try block. That is completely fine. You just have to add the other methods. You don't need to modify any other part of the code. I'll put the code on my GitHub. So I hope this video was, you know, useful for you. You have learned something new, that okay, we can develop these things also. And you know, just if you're not using for the testing, but at least you have one Python project with you, that you know, you can tell people, you can write it in your CV that okay, I have tested my own performance testing tool. Okay guys, so thanks for watching this long video, and let's meet again with some interesting tutorial. Thanks. You'll get the link for this code on the description of this video. Yeah, have a good one. Thanks.